Right, change in pace now. It's time for our business news. I'm joined in the studio again by Brian Quinn. Brian, we're kicking off then with this kind of closely divided Congress, if you will. They've just delivered the Biden administration a critical victory in a push for a massive economic stimulus plan.
That's right, Rochelle. In the Senate, it was a marathon 15-hour session wrapping up just before dawn as senators there narrowly approved a budget blueprint using Vice President Kamala Harris's tiebreaker vote to clear the 51-vote majority. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives has now passed the measures quickly, just about 40 minutes ago. That passage clears the way for Democrats to fast-track Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan, with a raft of current aid measures set to expire in March. Ellen Gainsford has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the concurrent resolution as amended is adopted.
Casting her first tiebreaker vote, Vice President Kamala Harris pushed the budget resolution through the Senate, taking the Democrats a step closer to approving Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief package. An all-night session, known as a vote-a-rama, allowed for non-binding amendments to the resolution. In a blow to Bernie Sanders and the left of the party, the Senate agreed to a Republican proposal to block a planned $15 an hour federal minimum wage. Another Republican amendment that passed came from Senators Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, blocking tax increases on small businesses during the pandemic, while a bipartisan amendment to prevent upper-income taxpayers receiving COVID relief checks was also approved. The U.S. economy has been battered by the pandemic. Figures released by the Labor Department show the unemployment rate fell to 6.3%, down from 6.7% in January. But analysts say this reduction is due to Americans dropping out of the workforce. The resolution paves the way for the next step in the budget reconciliation process, a procedure that allows the party in control of Congress to pass legislation with a simple 51-vote majority, without worrying about a filibuster.
Well, President Joe Biden taking the most recent U.S. jobs report as evidence that Washington needs to get that $1.9 trillion stimulus package passed as quickly as possible. Friday's Labor Department figures showing extremely meager job growth in January after December, in which payrolls actually fell by 227,000. Well, despite a few months of positive growth, there remain nearly 10 million more jobless Americans than there were before the pandemic hit. Biden's plan would provide $1,400 checks to most individuals and an additional $400 per month in federal unemployment aid on top of state benefits. That, along with $160 billion to boost vaccination efforts in the U.S., the president says he's prepared to push the package through Congress without help from Republicans if necessary.
Are we going to say to millions of Americans who are out of work, many of whom have been out of work for 6 months or longer, who've been scarred by this economic and public health crisis, don't worry, hang on, things are going to get better. We're going to go smaller, so it's just going to take us a lot longer, like until 2025. That's the Republican answer right now. I can't in good conscience do that.
Well, turning to the stock markets now, European indexes closed mixed as investors cast a wary eye on that troubling U.S. jobs report Friday. Corporate earnings season also dominating market moves, though, with France's CAC 40 gaining 0.9% as shares in pharmaceutical firm Sanofi rose on a positive earnings report. BNP Paribas shares up some 2.6% today as their annual profits beat expectations despite taking a hit from the pandemic. Wall Street, meanwhile, on track for one of its best weeks since November. Investors looking to that stimulus bill and vaccination plans to turn the U.S. economy around. They're also looking at news that the White House is planning to review the previous administration's European trade tariff policy. The Dow up around 0.2% in New York, the S&P and the Nasdaq slightly ahead of it there. Well, next, for fans of American football, Super Bowl Sunday is nearly upon us. The big game is going to look very different this year, and not just because the usual parties and massive stadium crowds are off limits due to the coronavirus. Many of the traditional advertisers at the big game have pulled out either to save money or to invest in philanthropy, leaving a raft of newcomers to get on board. Camille Nedelec has the story.
The game itself may not have changed, but the Super Bowl, usually the sports highlight of the year, is going to look very different. Gone are the huge crowds, with just 25,000 in-person tickets for a stadium that in pre-pandemic times fit up to 75,000. And the big brands whose adverts had become shows in and of themselves will also be staying away, such as Super Bowl fixture Budweiser, which will be sitting out the game for the first time in 37 years. It says that it will use the money to invest in promoting vaccination against the coronavirus instead.
Advertisers like Budweiser, Pepsi, Coke, Hyundai, Kia, they decided to sit out this year. And it's made room for a whole bunch of newcomers after the year that we've had and so much fear and anxiety and sadness, that it's really the goal during the Super Bowl to entertain, uplift, and to bring in some optimism.
Newcomers include many whose services have been given a boost from the pandemic, such as order-in food delivery service Uber Eats. The firm kicked off its $20 million campaign to support independent restaurants with a throwback to the 1990s cult classic film Wayne's World, featuring the original characters Wayne and Garth and rapper Cardi B.
Yummy time, excellent.
Logitech makes keyboards and webcams, and those have been in high demand as consumers set up home offices. The company's advert features rapper Lil Nas X and highlights how artists use technology in their work. The 30-second Super Bowl spot costs $5.5 million, which is on par with previous years.
Well, finally, for business, speaking of new ways to advertise, a masterclass in targeted marketing. As COVID-19 spread across the U.S., chocolate maker Hershey's noticed that areas with higher infection rates were also seeing better sales for the ingredients required to make s'mores. Demand for the sweet, gooey treat made from melting chocolate and marshmallows in a graham cracker sandwich jumped as much as 50% in hard-hit areas. When Hershey spotted the trend, it began targeting its advertising based on infection rates. The result, fourth quarter sales rose by nearly 6% over the previous year, with profits up over 40%. So why s'mores? The company says staying home likely encouraged more baking, with the public craving comfort in rich foods. Rochelle, I would posit the possibility that working from home also makes it harder for your colleagues to notice that ever-expanding waistline. Perhaps Zoom meeting only goes to about here.
Agreed. Way too close to the fridge. I do some social distancing away from the fridge.
It'd be dangerous for me as well.
Thank you very much, Brian, for the roundup of the business news. We're going to take a short break here on France 24. We'll be back on the other side with more international headlines. Do join us then.